Welcome to Ear Biscuits, the podcast where two lifelong friends talk about life for a long time. I'm Link.
And I'm Rhett. This week at the round table of dim lighting, we are celebrating 300 episodes of Ear Biscuits. That's the name of the podcast. Wow. We already said that. And we're gonna be doing that by hearing from you. Yes, we have just embraced.
You are now on the line.
Modern technology.
It's not gonna be live.
It's not that modern, actually. Thank you to all of you who recorded essentially voicemails, filling in the blanks, completing sentences. We had a few prompts that we went through that we sent out there into the ether, and you responded. Many of you responded.
Yeah.
With lots of heartfelt, funny, even some weird things that you said, and we're gonna be covering more than a handful.
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of fun getting a little taste of some of these and selecting some of them. If you're a longtime listener, this will give you an opportunity to see how much you remember and if you agree or disagree with what was the most impactful or the most memorable moments or that type of stuff. If you are new to Ear Biscuits, or you know, there's no shame in not having listened to everything. I mean,
just a little bit.
I certainly don't remember all of it. It's like, I don't think I was here for most of all of it, yeah. But if you weren't, this is an opportunity to say, hey, I might have to go back and find where they were talking about this or referring to this.
What year was episode 1?
I remember we were in the, we were in the other studio. We bought this table. I mean,
we were in the other studio doing that podcast for more than a year. And we've been in this studio for at least 5, 6.
Of course, the Ear Biscuits started off as us interviewing other YouTubers and getting their story. That's not what the podcast is now, and I'm glad it is what it is. Man, it's evolved so much. We're not gonna get into that. We're basically talking about the current iteration of Ear Biscuits and how that's impacted.
Well, really, that's what you talked about.
That's true.
Because
we left it open-ended.
We left it open-ended, and no one, and as far as I understood, like, recognized or brought up anything from those early days.
Well, there's one like intermediate episode which we'll talk about. But you know, I'll give credit to Stevie. She was instrumental in encouraging us to start a podcast. I remember back when we were trying to figure out what we were gonna call it. We were getting the rug, we were getting the table. And you know what? That turned out to be a great decision. So much of our professional development this has been such a catalyst for that in terms of what our brand means, how we talk to ourselves and how we talk to each other.
That's pretty much what it is.
And how we talk
That was the other option for
to
a
our
tagline.
audience.
Welcome to When We Talk to Ourselves.
You know, it's this show has had such an impact on our lives and our friendship, and I'm very grateful for it. And in some ways, 300 doesn't seem like a lot.
When it's once a week.
When you've done 2,000 episodes of Good Mythical Morning, but that's not a reason not to celebrate, because it is a lot, and damn it, we are gonna celebrate. This is special.
And I think as we go through some of your responses, maybe, that's gonna give us some stuff to talk about what the podcast has meant for us as it has meant things for you. But before we get into that first one, I'm very excited about Sextember, because you know what, around here in Ear Biscuits land, it's not called Sextember.
Nope.
It's called Sextember.
He said Sextember.
That's right, starting next week and continuing through the month of September, we're gonna be doing nothing but talking about sex on Ear Biscuits for a full freaking month.
I'm talking 4 episodes in a row. And I'll go ahead and say it, the last episode, the 4th one, we will be taking your questions, which we will be asking you to submit to us over the course of, starting now. If there's any question you want us to answer, any topic you want us to discuss in the world of sex, Sextember, we're falling.
Wow, that's good.
We're falling face first into what?
Well,
let's save that.
More sex. Yeah, so I think maybe for the full month, I don't know, this is not, this podcast is, it doesn't get too doesn't get too damn bad. That's about as bad. That's about as bad as it gets. I was just illustrating how we might curse every once in a while. But let me just tell you,
cursing and sex have really nothing to do with each other, right?
Well, it depends on if you come from an evangelical background or not. But which we will get into. But what I'm getting at
cursing during sex.
Let's
talk about that.
We're not going to be. I mean, we're going to be talking openly. We're going to be talking openly about sex. And so if that's not something that, if you don't want your children to be educated by us, and we're not gonna do this to educate, they may just get a sideways education.
I guarantee you, everybody's gonna get an education on us.
Yeah, so Sextember, mark your calendars. It's pretty much just, once a week.
One of the prompts,
September.
One of the prompts that we put out is what is it? Ear Biscuits is the reason I blank. So let's just start there with a few. Let's listen to one.
Ear Biscuits is the reason that I get in my car in the morning and actually want to go to work. I have over an hour commute, and being able to listen to Rhett and Link talk about stories from their lives and be introspective on different things that have been going on around the world is really fantastic to go into every single day. Starting my morning with two best friends is definitely how I'd like to start my day for the rest of my life.
Thank you for that, Noah.
That was Noah Cook. Are we saying last names? In that case, I just did.
Some people submitted first and last names. Some people just did first names. Some people did like nicknames. So we'll just do whatever you did.
Thanks, Noah. I think that I would like to ride into work with two best friends who just wouldn't shut up in the back seat the whole time.
But this is the thing. This is my issue with what Noah said. Is it makes me feel like we're not giving Noah enough content. I mean, Noah's riding.
Yeah, well, he has an hour commute.
Riding to work assuming he works daily, Monday through Friday. We're doing this once a week.
Yeah, I don't know.
We're gonna have to go to 5 times a week.
I don't know what he does the other 4 mornings out of the week, but Taylor does something different. Let's listen to that voicemail.
Hey, Rhett and Link. Ear Biscuits is the reason I get so much stuff done around my house. That is my chicken in the background if you heard him. But Ear Biscuits helps me keep focused on what I'm doing, and it's entertaining as well. So anytime that I finish an episode, I realize that I've done about an hour's worth of work without even realizing it. So keep it up, and we love you, and you guys are awesome. Bye, guys.
And by we, I think the chicken is included.
Yeah. Thank you, Taylor, and thank you, Taylor's chicken.
Chicken. I would love to have a chicken in the background. I wish I could be on more phone calls with people who have chickens in the background. I mean, it's just something that we need more of. But I do think that is something, that's how I listen to podcasts. I listen to podcasts while driving or while doing something. I mean, does anyone just sit down and be like, what are you doing? Well, right now what I'm doing is only listening to a podcast. Have you ever done this?
I'm always doing something else, usually driving, but I've started mountain biking. I think I told you this. I'll mountain bike up when I'm doing the climbs. Like typically my routes are majority climb and the majority downhill. Some routes are a little bit of both, but like, especially for the long climb routes, I'll listen to a podcast on the way up, and then on the way down, I'll switch to music. Because
you want to listen to the podcast when you're working hard. You want to listen to music when you're just riding the gravity.
Well, yeah, it's fun. That the music gives me that energy to like just. It's more fun, but it's also more technical. You could die if you're not really concentrating on, missing certain things at a higher speed.
Because some people feel like you might need music for motivation while going up a hill.
But I like getting in the zone of ideas when I'm just trying to granny crank it up,
Well, I just gotta say, I think I'm glad that we can be a part of your lives in this way, even if we're in the background with your chicken or in the background as you're driving to work. We're not asking to be front and center. We're not asking to be completely focused on. We want you to focus on what you need to focus on. We just want to be present.
It's cool to be a companion.
Yeah.
Yeah, to be along for the ride. I really like picturing what people are doing. Oh, they're getting done.
Right.
I mean, maybe there's people who just sit down and give it their complete, I mean, for the video version, and there are people who prefer to watch it on YouTube, it's still a background thing, but I think, you'll stop and be like, whoa, what's that look on his face? Is that an additional meaning? Is that another layer?
There's a layer of context sometimes with the faces.
Let's hear from Abby.
Ear Biscuits is the reason why I feel like I should install a window in my shower. I love you guys. I love the pod. The channel's awesome. It's just really nice to see a couple of best friends succeeding in life just by being themselves. Pretty epic. Congrats on 300 episodes. Can't wait for more.
Abby sounds like
that's a nice voice.
It's
soothing.
It's like a Delilah voice. You know what I'm saying? It's like I would like to hear Free Falling from Tom Petty because I'm thinking about, my 8th grade girlfriend. Even with the laugh, the little I mean, that was good.
Yeah.
Abby, you need to go into radio. Or you at least need to consider it.
Because it's not a dying industry. Maybe you should start a podcast.
I mean, just start a podcast. You got a great voice.
2 friends succeeding at life by just being themselves. I mean, I like that.
There might be a better, again, the slogans just keep coming.
I
mean, that's
succeed at, I like the mantra of succeed at life just by being yourself. And I do think that's something that, we're processing our lives in front of these microphones. And there is a level of, we've gotten to a point where there's a level of expectation that we can come into this place as kind of like a safe space for us to process. And I look forward to that. There's plenty of times when I'm like, I don't know exactly how I feel about this, but I'm gonna get it out. And it's great to have a venue like that. I mean, it's therapeutic in that way, but it's also so encouraging to see how many people, how it resonates, where, you're having an honest conversation, and sometimes I even forget people are listening. At least maybe 90%, I'm totally just in a conversation at certain points.
And 90%, huh?
I think there are times.
Only 10% thinking about the fact that there's someone listening.
Yeah, that's a dangerous place for me, isn't it?
Yeah.
Does that make you nervous?
Well, I'm surprised based on you pretty much kept yourself in check most of the time.
But it's one thing to give people what they want or something that's gonna get clicks or get listens, but it's another thing to just do something we wanna do and for it to work and resonate.
Well, and I would say this whole idea of being yourself, it is, making the decision long ago for a number of reasons to just talk to each other. One of them just being it was easier.
Yeah.
Started us on this trajectory where you got to keep digging. Like, this isn't performance mode, and this isn't, unlike something like Ronstadt, which is obviously just this scripted podcast. You're putting your work out there, you're putting your art out there. This is really putting ourselves out there, and it's actually given us, like, we've revealed more and more and more about ourselves, and actually kind of began to understand by revealing and being vulnerable, actually learn more about ourselves in the process. Again, wasn't ever the intention. It's just something that sort of happened.
It's a win-win. Who else do we have? Shanice?
Ear Biscuits is the reason why I graduated with a uni degree this year. It helped me conquer my travel anxiety by keeping me entertained and calm on my long trips in and out of uni. Thank you so much.
Shanice is saying that the reason why they got through college or uni, whatever that is.
The same thing in Australia, I think.
Is Ear Biscuits. I mean, being able to help. It's like, okay, this is the show that Shanice goes to. When it's like, I'm traveling, I'm anxious.
Well, I always wanted to be
feels good.
A uni professor. I mean, I always love the idea of just walking around a campus and watching the leaves fall, and then going into a classroom with like a wild haircut and beard and like saying something that makes the students confused. So this is as close as we're ever gonna get. And Shanice has basically just validated that dream of mine.
I don't think that's what Shanice was going for.
Okay, right, yeah, that's right.
But it is validating.
Oh, I'll take it.
Do we get like an honorary copy of the degree?
I think we might get an honorary degree at that said uni, whichever uni that is.
We got some more good ones, but first let's promote some merch. What are you wearing?
Well, you know, over in the Mythical Kitchen, they have perfected this particular technique of the palm heel strike.
Yes.
Which I believe
it's for garlic.
they use for garlic, but I think it transfers to many different things in the kitchen. But just in case you need to be inspired in your own kitchen and remind yourself that you too are capable of a palm heel strike, get the t-shirt from mythical.com.
I love that. It's very action oriented. It's cool. I had not seen that until I just looked at it. That's beautiful.
This is the first time you're seeing it?
Yeah.
I've been wearing it for a while.
Since the beginning of this podcast.
Yeah, right. I mean,
yeah, I didn't look down there.
Almost 20 minutes.
Did not look down there.
Okay, I'm not offended.
You want to keep going?
Yeah, well, you were reaching for the laptop, so I was assuming that's what was happening.
I got 3 in a row who are in a similar vein, still with the prompt, Ear Biscuits is the reason I blank. Here's Rosie.
Ear Biscuits is the reason I feel understood. I also stopped believing in God after being raised in a very religious environment and family. And the only difference between me and you was that I had to go through it all alone. And hearing you guys' story and how similar it is to mine, even though I live across the globe, just really helped me feel like I'm not alone out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosie.
Thanks, Rosie.
You want to just play? You want to move through all 3 of these, and then we can kind of talk about them together.
Yeah, here's Matthew.
Ear Biscuits is the reason I'm much more open about losing my religion and replacing it with openness and kindness and curiosity. After growing up in the South and giving so much of myself to the Southern Baptist Church, my childhood best friend and I began touring the country and processing all of that just out on the road. Both of your stories run really parallel to ours, and it's been a joy to share such an eye-opening experience together through Ear Biscuits. I love you guys. Thank y'all so much.
Love you too, Matthew.
Thank you, Matthew.
We got some parallelization happening there. That's like him and his best friend.
Touring, doing something.
Touring.
Band?
Some sort of tour.
Comedy show?
Situation happening.
I don't know.
All right, I got a third one here. This is Amna.
Ear Biscuits is the reason I have so much knowledge about the South in the United States, despite me being totally removed from it as a Pakistani. But you know, this place I call home is also a conservative place with its Islamic traditions, rituals, etc. I find myself drawing these intricate parallels inside my head. The patriarchy, the underlying racism, intolerance. It's just been a fascinating exercise to get this outside view of something that sounds so similar.
Wow, thank you for that.
It's super cool. I mean, there's so much feedback we got at the time and even now with this prompt on our spiritual journey episodes, our Lost Years sub-series, deconstruction stories. But it was just nice to see that, you know, there's people who are saying they feel understood and not alone. They relate to our situation directly, or they're coming from a totally different place on the planet.
Well, I think the cool thing about what Amna shared is talking about the patterns, right? And you know, it doesn't matter where you're from, and it doesn't have to be the American South or Pakistan, but there are systems, there are oppressive systems, and people who have been in power, who have been oppressing people forever, right? And you know, they might come in different forms, but a lot of people have suffered under those systems and then at some point questioned those systems and questioned how it relates to them personally. And that's another pattern. That's a pattern that's happening in the United States and all around the world. I mean, we're most familiar with what's happening in the United States in the evangelical church. and that is people are leaving in the, I know it might seem like things are getting more and more polarized, and it might seem like certain very loud voices on the fringes are getting louder and louder, and so it might seem like certain groups are growing, but the reality is that in a lot of ways people are leaving behind those old oppressive systems, and they're kind of collapsing on themselves. And I'm sure they'll be replaced with other things, and we're never, it's like we're not immediately going to just have some utopia, but it's been amazing to see the number of people who have, just by us together kind of processing our story, and people hearing like, oh, this is it's so common, right? I don't think that we were responsible for a movement by any means. I think that we were just representative of a movement that has been happening for years, and we just vocalized what was happening in our little corner of this movement, and that was people beginning to question these foundational things that they had built their lives on, and now they're seeing more and more people are in the exact same boat. So, and this is just a sampling of similar messages that we got from people who are like, hey, I basically have gone through something very similar to what you guys went through, and thanks for talking about it.
To Rosie's point about loneliness, I'm just continually grateful that we have had the benefit of supporting each other and being there for each other throughout our entire lives.
Yeah.
And especially when exploring things as weighty as your deeply held beliefs and practices, it's just really encouraging to hear that us sharing how we leaned on each other is then becoming something that they can lean on. And I just didn't know that was gonna happen. But it's cool for people not to feel alone. It's such a, that's just one of the things. If I need to cry, I can think about either being lonely or thinking of people being lonely. Like that's gonna do it. I don't want to cry right now. So let's move on to Mercedes. Actually, I think this might make me want to cry a little bit more.
Ear Biscuits is the reason I was initially able to get through the loss of my lifelong best friend. She'd shown me GMM years prior, and when she passed away at a young age from cancer, listening to their episode about the loss of a loved one on a loop each night is what brought me comfort and company in a time of isolation. And they don't know that they held my hand through that, but I can't thank them enough either way.
Wow.
Well, we do now, Mercedes. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, it's really remarkable how much that episode about Ben has connected with people. And again, whether you're talking about the deconstruction series, you're talking about the episode where we talked about, losing Ben. Our intention every time we get ready to talk about something is not like, okay, well, this is gonna bring in the listeners. This is, you know what I'm saying? It's like, it's really a decision to kind of look inside and be vulnerable and kind of speak from our perspective, which we recognize is a very particular, limited perspective. But what you just find repeatedly is that somebody is gonna connect with some aspect of it. In a way that we're just sitting here talking about the guy we grew up with who were sad that he's gone. And then you just see how many people watch that and listen. I mean, on YouTube especially, we're like, oh, the Ben episode, it's broken 4 million views, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just this phenomenon of just making a decision kind of unintentionally just to speak from the heart.
And sometimes I'm like, wow, I think people watch that video because it's the rawest we've ever been.
It was a difficult episode to get through, for sure. And you don't see us in that state a lot. It was
so raw. It's like, are people watching for the spectacle of it? And okay, whatever, if some are, but it is really nice to hear that is not the majority, I believe, of why people are watching that episode. It's a legitimate connection. And I do think, the experience that we have in being vulnerable and then seeing how people, they take it how they will, but if it enriches their life, there's a reward cycle there that then says, okay, are there things that I am willing to explore? I'm more willing to explore things because I see that people benefit from it. I think there's a couple of things, and one is just personal growth, and the other one is how it affects the programming of the show. From a personal standpoint, and it's not just true of being a host of a podcast. I think this is true of life. Is that when you take a risk to be vulnerable, and someone benefits from it, like there's a connection, there's intimacy, there's help or solace. It fuels that. It gives you more courage to do that again. And I think that is the development of a big aspect of this show. From a programming standpoint, you talk about something like Sextember. Yes, we know that that's sensational. That we're gonna talk about sex.
Yeah.
And so it's not just I really want us to process sex and talk about it and figure it out.
Cry about sex.
It's not.
You're gonna cry during sex.
There is a programming motivation that like now we're willing to go into unmined areas of our lives because that's what this show has become. And so there is a programming producerial decision in, okay, if we talk about sex, I think that people are gonna come out of the woodwork and be introduced to Ear Biscuits, and I'm excited about that. But I'm gonna do it subject to the values that we put in place, that when we do it, we're gonna approach it with honesty, and we're not just trying to cash in. We don't wanna do anything to make it cheap, even though conceptually it could go that way. I think we're putting in boundaries where that's just, I mean, as a listener that you expect us not to like, cash in's not the right word, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well it's the
use a topic
it's the
or use
balancing,
vulnerability.
Well, we try to avoid what I might call vulnerability porn, right? Which I do think is something that exists in media and exists on the internet, and it definitely exists in our industry. And it can be a tough line to walk, especially like our brand is comedy first with almost everything we do. This podcast has become a place where we are most honest and most vulnerable. But when you start seeing people respond to the vulnerability, then the vulnerability becomes a content strategy, I think is what you're getting at.
Yeah.
And that can feel a little icky. And so ultimately what we're trying to do is, hey, we understand that these subjects and us being honest about these things may connect with more people, and that may be good for the bottom line of the podcast and of the business. But at no point are we moving into this place where, let's manipulate our audience through us being vulnerable. And that's something that you gotta think about and something you gotta keep in check.
Yeah, and so do you.
Yeah.
Right?
It goes both ways.
But with the next prompt, it kind of went in the more comedy response direction, which kind of balances out what this show's about. So I think we can go there next. The prompt is, what moments live rent-free in your head from Ear Biscuits? And let's start with Alexander.
Congratulations on 300 episodes, guys. I've listened to every single one. And the one Ear Biscuit moment that just truly lives rent-free in my mind is when the battleship guy was narrating you guys eating imaginary s'mores. I think of it all the time, and just a big old hunk of chocolate. Congratulations, guys. Keep doing what you do.
That was our buddy Dave DeAndrea, voiceover artist extraordinaire.
One of the last guests we had on the show where we went through that period where occasionally we would bring in someone that we wanted to talk to, but that wasn't necessarily famous. It was just more of subject matter based stuff. and as a voiceover artist, I mean, we didn't know we were gonna start asking him to like to spitball and start doing impromptu VOs for us, but I just remember how much fun we had. And it's cool to know that like, it's cool to create stuff that people are just going about their everyday lives and they just stuff is just triggered.
Well, he was the voice of Battleship.
Yeah.
When did we play or listen to, was that on GMM?
I feel like it was a Good Mythical More thing.
And we were like making a big deal about the voice and then we tracked him down.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it turns out he was much more than just the voice of the Battleship.
Yeah, he was the voice of us eating s'mores.
Right, which I do not remember the specifics.
I didn't remember the actual s'more thing. Stuff that we forget, people, it gets stuck in people's brains.
Yeah.
And they're not even charging us for it.
How about Nia?
Hello, Ear Biscuiteers. The Ear Biscuits moment that lives in my head rent-free is Link's discussion about sorting mail. Because it do be like that sometimes. You gotta go through the laborious task of sorting through all the junk mail to reach that one niche envelope that really gets you going. But it just ends up being a $5 rebate check. Hey, it's better than nothing.
I'm really trying to follow this analogy. So in that analogy of sorting the mail.
Yeah, I think this have to go into Sextember.
Are the different pieces of mail different things that you could do with one partner? Or are they
that's how
multiple
I took it.
Partners? I mean, I'm not trying to make any assumptions.
I took it that it was like different practices that then you found the right one. You found the right piece of mail.
But then it turns out to be a $5 rebate, and so you thought that you were getting something special.
The analogy's fun.
Yes,
but it can be stretched, we've gone from me like speaking in code and trying to come up with, but I mean, that is something that Christy and I would do. And it is something that we can talk about in Sextember. It's like, how do you talk about sex in your own house with other people around, children or otherwise? But yeah, we've gone from like speaking in code and that being like a shocking, this is what they're talking about now, to us doing it for 4 weeks in a row.
But I also think that we've potentially ruined actually sorting the mail, like literally sorting the mail for many people. Like you just,
I love it.
You want to go to your mailbox. You want to see if you've got, if there's any checks in the mail,
and you want to get coupons,
and all you can do is think about Link in his bedroom. So on his behalf, I apologize to you if we have ruined that for you.
It all runs together for me because is sorting the mail the same story as when we were locked in the bedroom? Locked in our own bedroom? I think it was. I think that's how I told the story.
I transfer whatever it is that we said and did in an episode to the internet mind.
Right.
It leaves my own mind because I did it, I was here, it's on the internet, it's available.
Yeah, I got more room.
Why does it need to be in my mind anymore?
Yeah.
This is how I think about Good Mythical Morning. When people start asking questions about something we ate, I'm just like, it is just a huge blur, not even a very detailed blur.
Let's go to Karina.
The Ear Biscuit moment that lives rent-free in my head is Rhett talking about watching trashy reality TV for 7 hours.
Yeah, you were on quite a tear there.
Did I talk about it for 7 hours or did I talk about watching it for 7 hours? I don't think I talked about it for 7 hours.
In my memory, it was both. I've
definitely watched a lot of, at least 7 hours worth of trashy reality TV.
You're giving people all types
of I hope, listen.
Permission to just love that crap.
Well, they didn't need my permission.
Nope.
I think what I've done is I've connected with the millions, hundreds of millions of people out there who unashamedly watch reality television, trashy reality television. And I told you this, so we're a big fan of John Wilson, How To with John Wilson on HBO, which probably was a wreck at some point on this show. And super innovative documentary series, very quirky, very funny, very real and raw. He was a guest on Conan O'Brien's podcast, Conan Needs a Friend. And just somewhere in the middle of the conversation, like Conan was asking him what he enjoy, like what kind of entertainment he enjoys. And of course you got this like, what is the word? The auteur. You got somebody like him and you're like, well, whatever this guy likes is gonna be this thing that's refined. And he was like, well, I'm a big part of Bachelor Nation. And he goes on to talk about how much he likes The Bachelor. And I think he may have talked about Too Hot to Handle. He talked about trashy reality TV.
I mean,
and
I
explained why he liked it. And I was like,
you
that's
could start
exactly why I like it.
You could start a commentary channel.
Well, that's been done.
That's kind of a big fuel for the commentary fire across YouTube anyway. Mason or Maison, if that's the French pronunciation.
The Ear Biscuits moment that lives in my head rent-free is the time that Link was telling a story about him and Rhett were in the car on the way somewhere, and the guy next to them at the stoplight got out of his car to get something out of the trunk, and Link was like, I have a great idea. I'm going to play a little prank on this random man. I'm going to get into the driver's seat of his car. And Rhett responded like it was a little zany, but to me it was insane. But maybe Rhett is just used to this. I peed my pants.
Did you actually do it or did you say you were gonna do it?
Again, I don't remember the specifics. I don't think I actually got in the driver's seat, but if that's how I told the story, I need to stand by it.
I think I would remember if you actually went through with it.
I remember you reacting as if it was a bit zany.
Just a little bit zany, nothing too serious.
Amy weighed in.
The Ear Biscuits moment that lives in my head rent-free has got to be when the lighting fell down. The crew quickly rushed in to clean up. Rhett's completely gone off camera and Link is singing Everything is Awesome into the microphone and also trying to explain what happened. Pretty funny.
and I think Kiko thought he might get fired after that.
Because it was one of these things, right? It was one of these circular, spherical light fixtures that fell.
I'm just like, finally, good content.
Yeah, and
something happened.
And I was like, I'm gonna go and
use
the bathroom.
There was a spill happening, and a number of people responded about that particular moment. It really lives in people's heads because it was I guess it was such an outlier to what normally happens on the show, and the fact that we just kind of went with it and kept it in there. People love that, and that's why I was like, yes, this is great. People are gonna remember this forever.
But the thing you have to be careful of is then you can't engineer the light falling down next time. Some people are not above that.
Whoop, the light, see, like that?
Right, yeah.
It would have seemed a little planned.
Yeah.
Crystal.
The Ear Biscuits moment that lives in my head rent-free is when Rhett was telling his story about his family trip to Scotland. And then at the very end, he says, well, turns out we're Irish.
That was a great moment.
That lives in my head. That's one I haven't forgotten, that I kind of remember pretty regularly with a little bit of shame.
Yeah, but as an ear
Not
biscuit,
that I'm ashamed to be Irish.
I remember it as an ear biscuit moment because I knew it was coming, but then when you hit us with it, it was just like, talk about burying the lead. It was just perfect. That just felt good.
And that's one of those things that has, recently spending time with my family, the McLaughlins up in the mountains, when I was in North Carolina a while back. We was the same group that had gone to Scotland together. Yeah. And so they're not really letting me live that down, and also kind of holding me to this idea that we now have to go to Ireland.
It's a running joke.
Yeah, so mom can break her other ankle.
Who's pushing that trip the most? And because someone really wants to go to Ireland. Your dad?
My dad definitely mentions it more than anyone.
It's hilarious, man.
I think we gotta make it happen.
If we were like to talk about the top 10 funniest moments of the show, which maybe at 500 episodes.
Okay.
That's what we can do. That would definitely be on it. Like the biggest laughs from us. Anna.
The Ear Biscuits moment that lives in my head rent-free is, it's not that I'm stupid, it's that I can suspend my intelligence.
That's
I'm
right.
guessing that you said that?
You don't remember when I said that?
yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, it was a personal realization that I had in conversation with Lando and then with Lily. I remember trying to figure out how they perceived the internet me versus the real life dad me. And I just I gleaned that piece of wisdom that made me feel better about who I experienced freedom through this phrase even now. Because it's like I can be as stupid as I want and say, you know what? I don't care if people think I'm stupid. I'm in control of it.
Right.
That may not be completely true, but that's the narrative that I'm now putting out into the world.
I think that's a good story to tell yourself. And it could also be a good t-shirt. I don't know why we never made it.
Phoebe.
The Ear Biscuits moment that lives in my head rent-free is one Christmas when you guys were talking about Christmas gifts that you were getting for everybody, and Rhett was talking about how he was getting one for Christy, and he was getting some sort of food, like pickled food or something, and he had to jump over a fence to go to the place, and he completely like ripped his leg up. And it's stories like that that get me through school that it was then and now university now. So cheers guys.
Well, Phoebe, I'm glad I could provide that. I could help you get through your day by ruining my leg. How's
that going, by the way?
I went to pick up some food at a pizza place that was at that same intersection. And I haven't been to that intersection since the incident.
Uh-huh.
And this was just a couple weeks ago. And I was like, oh, what is familiar about this? I was like, oh, yes, there's that place that I got those
pickled stuff.
Pickled things for Christy, and then there's the fence. And it just looked so harmless, like from my car. It just looked like, how could that injure a man? It really did. I don't even remember what part of my leg it cut, but it was bad. But I'm glad it gave Phoebe some entertainment.
All right, now let's move on to the third and final prompt we have, which was Ear Biscuits changed the way I look at blank. You ready to get into this?
Yeah.
With Catalina?
Ear Biscuits has changed the way that I look at therapy. I now think that there's not one person on this earth who wouldn't benefit from therapy, and I have Ear Biscuits to thank for that.
Oh, well, we definitely agree with you.
That's cool.
Yeah, I think, coming from two guys who at one point definitely believed that, oh, we don't need therapy. Like, why would we need therapy?
Maybe counseling.
Yeah, you always make the distinction between therapy and counseling. I never really went down that rabbit hole so hard, but I was resistant for a really long time until my wife made the appointment, as I've told before. But I completely agree with you that this idea that the stigma around therapy is, in my mind, it's as dumb as there being a stigma around having a primary care physician that's worrying about you physically. And it's been so cool. This is one of the most rewarding things that has come out of Ear Biscuits for me, just because I understand personally how beneficial therapy has been, and people saying that I actually started going to therapy because there seemed to be this barrier that was broken down because you guys talked about it. Knowing how transformational that can be, because it's been transformational for me. I mean, if nothing else came from anything that we did, and it was just some people like Catalina decided to go to therapy, then I think this whole exercise would be more than worth it.
You know what? I think I agree with that. And in that case, maybe we should just end every episode with, and go to therapy. And then that's the end of every episode. No matter what we're talking about, no matter what the ending point is, just tack it on.
Okay.
Matter of fact, Kiko, when I just said it, and go to therapy, you can put that on the end of the episode.
Maybe we'll just test it on this episode.
And then you give Kiko a version of you so we can alternate so that, it's an us thing and not a me thing.
And go to therapy.
Why did you emphasize go?
I just wanted it to be a little different.
I have my therapy session tonight.
Okay, you going?
Exactly. I have a confession to make.
Here we go.
As much as we talk, as impactful as it is in my life, I'm still in this weird place where like every time I'm like, maybe he won't show up on the Zoom call because we do it remotely now. I don't know what it is. I'm so
well. No, you're not alone in that.
We're not going to get into this, but I'm just going to say, it is it has been so rewarding to my therapeutic experience in therapy. But I will say that it's still a constant struggle from week to week in terms of how I interact with, how I approach it and being ready for it and thinking that I would rather just do anything else every single week.
Listen, you're not alone in that. And I, as someone who has benefited greatly from therapy, rarely, if ever, my wife and I talk about this all the time, when that appointment comes around, am I like, yes, I'm always like, man, I just rather watch television. You know, I always want to do something else. Every single time I want to do something else. And then when it's over, I'm like, man, this is so helpful. So I don't know. Unlike Jesse, who's like always thinking about when the next therapy is and it just kind of embraces it. I could learn from that.
All right, here's a different response. Rachel.
Ear Biscuits has changed the way that I look at being from the South. I grew up in a small town in Kentucky, and after college I moved away to a bigger city, and I've changed the way that I look at a lot of things like religion and some social issues, and Brett and Link have shown me, especially through Ear Biscuits, that it's okay to still embrace your Southern roots, but also to grow and be a new person and have new ideas.
Thank you, Rachel.
That's a cool, nuanced response.
Because I know that I am guilty from time to time. Like if I get frustrated about something, like people, you know, being scared of the vaccine or not believing, you know, in evolution or whatever, I go into my Southern accent when I want to portray that mentality. I'm guilty of that. I usually defend it by saying that I am from the South, and those sentiments tend to be a little bit more highly concentrated in the South. But I'm glad that Rachel picks up on the fact that we're not ashamed to be from the South. We're not ashamed to be from North Carolina. Like we are proud to be from North Carolina. We are who we are. We talk the way that we talk, and we think the way that we think, and act the way that we act, largely because of where we come from. But at the same time, we do recognize that a lot of those things that we thought were, you know, we've moved beyond them. We've changed, we've grown. And also that's not something to be ashamed of. There's nothing to be ashamed with suddenly thinking some things and doing some things that you would have thought were unkosher or wrong or whatever when you were younger. So like you said, this is kind of a nuanced perspective, but I appreciate it because I don't ever want to communicate that we don't like the South and we're ashamed of the South. It's just that there's things that we thought and believed that we are glad that we no longer think and believe.
Yeah, I think when we talk about it, it's because we still consider ourselves Southern. That's something that we will always be.
Yeah.
It's not something that we're trying to hide. Let's see what Kate's got to say.
Ear Biscuits has changed the way I look at old Southern white men.
That's it? Old Southern white.
Yeah.
So now we're being more specific. You added this one in. Is this a trap for me?
No.
Old Southern and white? I guess I am.
Yeah, I mean, but hey, no, I think, maybe we're changing the image of old Southern white men.
Maybe, yeah, there's people who don't have old Southern white men in their lives.
We'll
be those guys if you need us to. We'll be the old Southern guys.
Oh my gosh, I'm just hoping that.
Hey, Kate, you want some butter beans?
Yeah, Kate is just a positive thing. It didn't necessarily sound positive, but.
Kate, you need to work on your inflection of positivity.
If Kate went through the trouble of doing this, I have to believe that the intention was that it is to be taken as a compliment, you know?
Well, compliment accepted.
There we go.
Maggie.
Ear Biscuits has changed the way I look at my own spirituality. When the deconstruction videos came out, I was too scared to watch them. I didn't trust myself to listen to your spiritual journeys and come out of it the same person. Over a year later, I finally worked up the nerve to listen to them, and they changed my life. I was a queer evangelical Christian deeply in the closet, and for the first time, I felt like I had the right to take steps back from the things that had hurt me my entire life. Thank you for that.
Wow.
Thank you, Maggie.
Maggie, thanks for sharing. Yeah, Yeah, the fact that there was an entire year. I mean,
listen, I totally get it that you're like,
blows me away.
I don't want to, you know, I recall people just, you know, friends, people that I was in contact with when we were kind of going through our deconstruction many years ago, who would be like, listen, I don't want you to talk to me about this.
Yeah.
Because I have this sense that if you were to talk to me about this, it would make me think things that are gonna drastically complicate my life. Because listen, it is incredibly difficult to extricate yourself from a belief system. Because usually there's family tied into it. There's a story and a security that's tied into it. Sometimes there's a career tied into it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many things that make it difficult to be like, yeah, okay, I don't know if I necessarily believe this, but the alternative is what? The alternative is me going through hell in order to get out of this. And if you're still in that belief system, maybe thinking that you would actually literally go to hell if you were to extricate yourself from this.
Yeah.
That's tough, that's heavy shit, man.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, I think you can hear it in Maggie's voice that they're happy that they went through this process, you know? And I'm not saying it was easy. I don't know Maggie's particular story.
Prioritizing your own safety and your own well-being is such an important and at times extremely difficult thing to do in ways that I can't even begin to imagine.
Yeah.
And I'm honored that, again, us just processing our experience has a positive impact in people's lives. I'm actually surprised that I don't carry that around as a weight. There's something about this experience for me that is exciting and freeing because I don't have to have all the answers and I don't have to be prescriptive for anyone, but as we've talked about before, sorry to beat a dead horse, but the cycle of reward of being vulnerable and just being honest and then letting people take it for what it's worth and gleaning positive impact in their own life it just makes me feel so good that I'm somehow bypassing getting in my own head about it. I guess it's never too late, but I'm grateful that this is a healthy place for me to be.
Are you getting at the dynamic of making the decision to talk about some of the things that we talk about, and especially when you get into talking about religion, and obviously doing it from a non-expert standpoint.
Yeah.
We may have been professional Christians, but not, I don't have a divinity degree. We're not, so talking about these things just from a personal perspective, and then knowing that it's going to have repercussions. I mean, some of I listened to a few of these that I actually didn't include, just because it gets, not because it gets a little heavy, but there's a lot of people who are like, listen, I basically left this belief system. I left this belief system. I left this belief system because you guys decided to share. And are you saying that feels like a responsibility that you're kind of potentially having a weight too heavy of an influence on people's, like, the weightiest decisions that they can make?
I think I could feel that, but I don't because the boundary that I put in place in how I approach these conversations. That it's not people's application is not our responsibility. It's the listener's responsibility, what they're gonna apply and how it's gonna affect their lives. Just because it's not just hearing something, there's a lot of other factors, and it's their responsibility what they do with it.
I think that's how I not rationalize it, but I think that's how I think for me the reality is that we're just a drop in the bucket. We may be the straw that breaks the camel's back in some situations, but just like we used to say back when we were sharing the gospel with people, on average, people need to hear the gospel 19 times before they make a decision. Us telling our story isn't going to take somebody from point A to point B. There's all kinds of things that are happening, and sometimes it can just be a slight different perspective. And again, we don't tell these stories so that people will stop being Christians. Like, that's not the motivation. I will say that my motivation is that people will remove themselves from harmful belief systems, whether those belief systems are harmful to themselves or to others. And in some cases, that might be some forms or some expressions of things like Christianity. But, I think that was Maggie's process. And Maggie's process was being in a belief system where their very identity was being questioned. That was something that we had the privilege of not having to worry about. Being who we are and the demographic that we come from, our identity was anything but questioned in that evangelical setting. It was all validated. So our journey's different. But yeah, I think that it is a heavy responsibility, and we do take, I will say we take it seriously. Like, we calculate the things that we say, and there are some times that we might say something and then we think about it a little bit later and we say, I think that could be taken the wrong way, and to say, hey, Kiko, let's take that out. We don't do this podcast live because we are very concerned about being able to, we know that people listen to it and are getting something from it and sometimes applying it to serious parts of their lives. So we take that responsibility. I'm not saying we edit it on a regular basis. I'm saying every once in a while we might say something and be like, that might be taken the wrong way. Let's not include that.
And by the way, credit to our team, credit to Kiko, as well as Jenna and other team members who, they serve as a filter for, they believe the best in us, and they know what we're trying to do and what we're trying to communicate. And so there are, it's not infrequent for us to have conversations about, hey, I feel like this might have been unintentionally triggering or came out the wrong way. And then, so maybe we just cut around this just because it could be misunderstood. And
because we're works in progress. Right, I hope
that too.
That 10 years
we say the wrong things and we didn't even know it lots of times.
Yeah, I hope
sometimes I say things and I never intended it. All these things happen.
But 10 years from now, I hope that I'm different than I am right now, and then 10 years later, I hope I'm different than I am 10 years from now. So, I don't really. The point being that, I'm glad you don't take it. You don't take it too much on yourself. You don't see that responsibility as something that becomes debilitating and then you're afraid to talk about it.
Yeah. And so, but I will, since we're talking about the team here, I'll say, you know what? The show wouldn't be what it is, Kiko, without your help. Jenna, thanks for being here too, for all your help in that. And we really appreciate it. Kiko, I can't see your face, but I know there it is. Hiding behind the glass. But yeah, it's, Kiko's voice is also in this thing, so even though it's not
literally
this
episode,
usually. Right. All right, we're not done with some good stuff though. Tucker, let's see what Tucker's got to say.
Ear Biscuits has changed the way I look at myself, whether it's from the Enneagram episode or the spiritual deconstruction or really any of them. It's just nice to hear from two guys who have similar thoughts as I do and who understand what it's like to grow up in the South and have different ideas. So thanks and congrats on 300 episodes.
Thanks, Tucker. I had a dog named Tucker. And you have a brother named Cole. Which is his last name.
Wow. Maybe it's actually,
we really are connected to Tucker.
Maybe it's actually your dog and my brother getting together and like forming an entity that is now communicating with us. Is that possible? Talk about being from the South and having different ideas.
Yeah.
It's okay to have different ideas, Tucker, thanks for listening.
Jacob.
Ear Biscuits has changed the way I look at my button.
Button.
Jacob is talking about the button that we discussed extensively. That is the button that you press. Not to get as graphic as I'm going to get during Sextember, but there is a button, and it's really just a region of your taint. that you can press if you haven't gotten all your pee out.
I saw a bunch of people talking about milking the snake, and I'm like, oh, we're not going back there, but you're getting pretty close.
Yeah, right. That is part of it sometimes. But the funny thing is we had a discussion with a group of guy friends that listened to the podcast, and if I recall correctly, they were either split or
our college buddies. Or just guys who listen to the podcast.
Yeah, none of them. I didn't want to specifically call them out, but yes, our college buddies. I don't think any of them knew about the button.
And I thought they all did. Yeah.
I mean, maybe I don't know if everybody's got a button. I definitely got one.
Well, I've told you what I thought, but I just don't want to go back into it because that's the one that I'm like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have talked about that one.
Well, but you know what? It apparently had an impact on Jacob.
All right, let's get to Gabia.
Ear Biscuits has changed the way I look at my embarrassing or not so good moments in life. Hey, at least I have a good story to tell.
Hey, listen.
At least I have a good start.
That's our philosophy. I gotta say, doing this podcast has actually changed the way I think about difficult stuff. There's been a few times. Now, I may not project that I am constantly worried about things, but I'm pretty much constantly worried about things, right? And so like, especially if I'm on
like a high overlook.
Well, I'm scared of heights, but no, like if I'm on vacation and Jenna can attest to this. When I was in Scotland, and I don't know, I think we there was a moment where I probably talked about this in the thing, but where I realized that one of the vans weren't insured because I thought that they were automatically insured because I'd used my credit card, which automatically takes care of that, but because they were beyond a certain number of passengers that they didn't apply. And so I'm driving these vans around uninsured and I'm in the middle of like the Highlands of Scotland and I start freaking out and I'm like calling Jenna like, we gotta figure out how we gotta do this. And so anyway, but doing this podcast has changed the way I approach those moments where I think the world might be about to end. And I know that having uninsured vans is not like an apocalyptic situation, but sometimes I can quickly get to that point. But when something, that day in Scotland, when all of a sudden like the bridge went out and the water was coming across and I was like, I don't know how we're gonna get back. And I think my mom's got a broken ankle and we gotta take a ferry. In those moments, I'm holding on to the comfort of knowing I'm gonna be able to talk about this on Ear Biscuits. You know, like
if I make it.
I'm gonna be able to bring this to the Ear Biscuiteers and we're all gonna connect by me talking about this harrowing experience. But you know what? You don't have to have a podcast to have a good story. And I think that's the lesson in
you just have to have a really robust blog.
You don't even have to have a blog. You just having a good story, you know? And what was it? I thought you told me that somebody told
a guy back home. I don't know if he made it up, but when I was leaving and moving out, he said, remember, it's better to have a good story than a good time.
And I don't necessarily know if I specifically relate to that because I think being in the moment and having a good time is important.
If you're not having a good time,
at least have a good story.
That's the right way to.
That's the saying. That's what it should be. If you're not having a good time, at least have a good story.
There you go.
You know, put that on a t-shirt.
Yeah. Those are all the voicemails that we're gonna read. Sorry we couldn't play all of them, but that would be crazy. But we listened to every single one. Actually, we didn't, but we listened to enough of them.
We listened to a lot of them.
Yeah, and we cherish all of them. Thank you for submitting your voicemails. Thank you for being a part of this. It's a privilege. It really is an honor to find ourselves in a position where we're just talking, and then it becomes a part of people's lives. It's memories are triggered. There's inside jokes are had. Relationships are formed. And broken.
And
over these
the
things.
podcast itself is shaped so significally by the ongoing conversation that we have with you.
Yeah.
In the alternative timeline, if one particular understanding of the multiverse theory is correct, there is one timeline where Rhett and Link decided to start Ear Biscuits and they talked to each other and they never read anybody talking about it. And it's the Rhett and Link with no influence podcast just going on and on and on. Do you think about how different that version of the podcast would be than this version of the podcast, which happens in the context of the community of mythical beasts who listen?
It
drastically different.
It probably wouldn't exist, but if
Probably
it did,
wouldn't
it would
exist.
be drastically different. So we've thanked the crew. We've thanked each other, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Link.
And now we're thanking you, dear listener, for making us a part of your listening life, or if you watch on YouTube, your watching and listening life. It means a lot to us to know that for over an hour every week, we're a part of your life. It really is crazy to think about it. Hashtag Ear Biscuits. I mean, to Rhett's point, let's keep the conversation going. I do have a rec. You know I love a good music documentary. You know, and I got a number of people in my life that will send me stuff and get me hip to some new music docs because I like them. But I found this one on my own. It wasn't hard to find because if you have Apple TV, a new show is gonna pop up. And this one is called Watch the Sound with Mark Ronson. Mark Ronson, many years ago when we went to a YouTube creator summit, like an invitation only, a small group of creators go into this room in New York, and then they bring in people like Wes Anderson, or the previous year was Will Smith. They're all, Mark Ronson came in there and he told a story about developing his album and getting Stevie Wonder to play on his album. And the way that he told that story, I was in tears. Like I was crying. I just remember how much it moved me. And then when I saw that he has a series on Apple TV, I was like, I gotta check this out. And I quickly remembered how he's a really good storyteller. And the way he's an interesting personality, especially on screen. But if you don't know who Mark Ronson is, he's the Uptown Funk guy with Bruno Mars. He's a Amy Winehouse's producer, and he came up that way. And so now he's a very well-established music producer and DJ. But in every episode, he goes through an aspect of music production. And even if it sounds kind of dry, like episode 1 is on auto-tune, episode 2 is on sampling. I haven't watched episode on reverb, synthesizers, drum machines, and distortion. But based on the first 2, I love it because it's really immersive. He talks to really high profile guests, like he interviews Paul McCartney, and that interview is woven throughout at least the first 2 episodes. The one on autotune, he kind of goes through his own personal journey of going from hating autotune to trying his hand at it. And talk about vulnerability. There's this hilarious moment where he's like trying to sing through an autotune filter, having never really done it. And it's like a little cringy. And for a guy who like has a reputation, it's just really refreshing how he approaches this thing. So if you have any interest in the things I'm talking about, you'll love this. Watch the Sound with Mark Ronson.
Well, thanks for sticking with us on this journey of 300 episodes. And you know what? We're gonna be back again next week with number 301, and also the beginning of Sextember.
And go to therapy. To watch more Ear Biscuits, click on the playlist on the right.
To watch the previous episode of Ear Biscuits, click on the playlist to the left.
And don't forget to click on the circular icon to subscribe.
If you prefer to listen to this podcast, it's available on all your favorite podcast platforms. Thanks for being your mythical best.